Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Konoha Shinden, Steam Ninja Scrolls. Chapter 3, Ghost Inn. The Land of Hot Water. A small country that confines with the Land of Fire, in which there's the village hidden in the leaves. A country in which, just as its name says, hot springs gush out all over the place. A country whose main activity is tourism, and that flourishes thanks to the blessing of its rich natural resources. A country that has a shinobi village called Village hidden in the hot springs, but insists on being pacifist. And the country in which the man who killed my father was born. It soaks into my exhausted body. I muttered earnestly while I surrendered to the muddy hot water, pure white as snow, and inhaled with my whole chest the indescribable scent typical of the hot springs. The voice of my heart had accidentally escaped from me like this when I realized that I was relaxing in the warmth that was wrapping me. I couldn't even express with words the tremendousness of hot springs, in which people bare not only their bodies but even their hearts as soon as they enter. Hey, they'll call you an old man, Dot. Thereupon, these words replied from behind me. However, also the owner of this voice sank into the hot water, and groaned a similar thing too. It penetrates into my whole body, in a voice even louder than mine. When I stared speechlessly at her, the owner of the voice, Tenden-san, made an awkward face. As I thought, I accidentally said it. But Tenden-san said, stretching her arms. The fact is that I can't resist to this feeling of freedom. Under the cloudless blue sky, Tenden-san smiled wryly. Infected by it, I smiled too. The gentle and smooth touch of the hot water, the open air that cooled my hot shoulders, and the slight breeze that brushed my hair were pleasant. Surely, a feeling of freedom like that was the greatest charm of an open-air bath. Tenden-san and I were in an open-air bath of an old inn in the Land of Hot Water. Maybe because the sun was still high, there weren't other people besides us in the open-air bath, and it was a reserved situation. The fact that we had the hot spring of a free-flowing source all for ourselves was quite a luxurious personal experience, a blessing of Mother Nature. In the hot spring health resort of this old inn there wasn't only the milky white muddy hot spring, but also various kinds of hot springs gushed out, different for both appearance and the quality of the water, like hot springs black like ink, hot springs of the reddish-brown color of earth, hot springs of the refreshing green color of bamboo, etc. Even in the Land of Fire there were hot spring health resorts with a similar atmosphere, but this was the Land of Hot Water, another country. As I thought, here and there in proximity of the country border, and then after we crossed the country border, the unfamiliar uses and customs that made me feel I was in a foreign country became the rule. One of these was the custom called drinking spring water. Apparently, in the Land of Hot Water everybody regularly drank the water of the hot springs. For this reason, here and there in the Land of Hot Water many things called spots for drinking spring water had been created. No matter in which hot spring you went, they also sold bottled water of the hot spring that was dispensed as beverages. In the restaurants they had this way of cooking in which they boiled meat in the water of the hot springs. And if you went to the hospital they told you just drink the water of such and such hot spring for one day instead of medicines. By the way, speaking of hot springs, it's not that it was healthy drinking the water of any of them. There was water of hot springs you could drink a lot, and water of hot springs you couldn't drink. Apparently, there were also hot springs in which it was good for your body when you soaked into it in general, but its components were too strong and would turn into poison instead if you drank the water directly. Moreover, it would naturally make you harm if you drank too much water, even though one of the hot springs you can drink. Just like medicaments, also when drinking spring water you had to follow the doses and rules of use. And there were expert doctors, called hot spring doctors, characteristic of this country, who had a full knowledge of the composition of every hot spring and made this kind of ascertainment. There are antidotes to sulfur, which is one of the components often included in hot springs, and classes held at the academy, but I was amazed by the fact that the custom of drinking spring water had taken root like this even in the world of medical science, and there are even medical specialists. Of course it probably depended on sickness, but the fact that doctors healed with hot springs without medicines was a wisdom typical of this country, which had been connected with hot springs since ancient times. For me, who thought that hot springs were only things where you soaked into, it had been a new discovery. Even if we're looking at the same thing, the point of view changes if the country changes. Also, the way of thinking changes. Also, in the land of fire you drink hot spring water, but going there expressly to drink hot spring water is not popular, and it's not that there are establishments to drink spring water here and there like in the land of hot water. Of course, drinking spring water is not a major thing to this extent in the land of fire. It's natural, but I thought that the further I got from the village hidden in the leaves, the more the worlds I hadn't seen yet would become, and I got excited. I thought from the bottom of my heart that when I would meet new sceneries, new point of views, new way of thinking like this, I'd be glad I was traveling. Well, speaking of the reason why I was immersed into a hot spring with Tenen-san in such a place, so far away from the village, it was mostly related to that misunderstanding of mine. I was to accompany them as an attendant in a mission to inspect the undeveloped areas that were near the country border, but I had misunderstood the number of days of the mission as 2 days instead of 20 days. For this reason, it turned out that the number of equipment tools I was carrying wasn't enough, and they sent me as supplementary baggage from Konoha in a hurry. And Tenen-san was the one who carried the baggage all the way from Konoha till here. Tenen-san is a specialist that excels at wielding ninja tools, and on top of that she has a natural good figure and she's a model of stylish kunoichi. They say that she was Gai-san's student, but the teacher-student relationship between Tenen-san, who always shows a calm look and appearance, and Gai-san, who's extremely hot-blooded, seems a strange combination. Also the Sixth and Gai-san were like that, but the fact that those two, who seemed so unfit for each other at first sight, got on surprisingly well was a mystery. So, I thank Tenen-san again. Tenen-san, thank you very much for today. Because of me, you came all the way to such a far place. Come on, you don't have to apologize so much. I already told you, but I only stopped by for a day off hot spring tour while I was at it. Better, I guess I want to thank you because I had an excuse to come fair and square to a splendid hot spring like this. Tenen-san said, and smiled. Tenen-san would be on holiday right from today on. Apparently, you have to submit a notice when you travel and lodge outside the village during holidays, but Tenten had requested to go to a hot spring in her next day off a lot of time before. Meanwhile, since she had heard by chance about the fact that someone had to bring me a baggage in a hot spring, Tenen-san, who was hoping of going to a hot spring, was designated on the condition that she was on holiday while giving me the baggage. Apparently, it would have taken her at least 2 days to take the baggage at my home and come here, but she came riding quite fast, so within 2 days she had already crossed the country border. She was also fast in understanding while the hot water of the hot spring was wrapping her whole body. Really, I was no match for Tenen-san. Well, my mother, what did she? That kid, she looks like she's reliable, but she's a little bit careless since she was young. She said while smiling, but I'll be scolded when I get home. Looking at me, who had dropped my shoulders heartbroken, Tenen-san giggled. Come on, you'll be all right. I hope so, but I sighed. Honestly, the atmosphere had become heavy. Tenen-san had told me that she wanted to thank me instead, because she had been able to come to a hot spring, but the truth was that she had been troubled for my fault. Moreover, I broke any record by mistaking 20 days as 2 days. The question was, how would my mother take it? Tenen-san said she had laughed, but she had reacted with a smile because she was in front of other people. What would she really do when I came back home? Frightening. I didn't want to come back to the village. I wanted to stay submerged into the hot spring for the rest of my life. I wanted to soak into that hot water that was considered to be good for beautiful skin. I wanted to soak in it because it was considered to be good to prevent sun-related skin damages, too. My mother is extremely scary when she's angry. I was afraid to the point that I didn't want to get out of the hot spring. If you do something bad, it's jinjutsu, was my mother's favorite phrase. Jinjutsu, no! I used to say as a child when I heard it, and always burst into tears. However, that time I cried because I was afraid of my angry mother's strong tone of voice. She never put me under a jinjutsu for real, of course. Or rather, when I think about it normally, it was impossible that she'd do it, but she often scolded me like that. It looks like that in other families they say if you do something bad, the bogeyman will come, but unfortunately I've never believed in things like the bogeyman when I was a child, and I wasn't afraid of it at all, so it looks like she ended up saying things like that instead, as a last resort, even if she was my mother. By the way, after that, when I entered the academy, I had casually asked my mother to perform it for my jinjutsu studies. Alright, also my mother had agreed right away with a light tone. However, maybe because it was when I was a child, I don't remember too much about the main point of jinjutsu. When I force myself to remember it, I don't know why, but my whole body starts trembling and sweating profusely, my breathing becomes erratic and foam comes out of my mouth, so I stop. I got off the track, but anyhow, Mom is better when I don't make her angry. No, she wasn't really angry. It's alright. Tenden-san encouraged me. Probably I was making a very serious face. Besides, I already told you a while ago, but I'm thankful to you instead. Tenden-san said, and fetched a kunai from nowhere with a white smoke. As expected from a ninja tool user. Come to think of it, Tenden-san excelled also at space-time ninjutsu. Hey, look at this. What is it? The thing Tenden-san was holding in her hand was a common kunai I often happen to see. However, Tenden-san was displaying the kunai with an expression full of confidence. This is a hot spring-used kunai I made by myself. I was wondering if I should sell it in my shop next time. Naturally, Tenden-san, who is a ninja tool user, loves ninja weapons to the point that she collects every ninja tool from all over the world as a hobby. Moreover, her hobby developed so much that she even opened a full-fledged ninja tool shop, but in this peaceful epic ninja weapons don't sell well, and apparently it's always empty. No matter how you look at it, it looks like a normal kunai. But in fact it's a wonderful kunai that never rusts even if you use it in a hot spring. How about it? It'll sell well, right? There, Tenden-san said with a proud expression, the kunai in one hand. Apparently, Tenden-san wanted to put this kunai, which she had developed by herself, into practice in a hot spring. That's why she had requested a day off in a hot spring. However, I didn't understand well the meaning of what Tenden-san had told me. Why in the world I'd want to use it in a hot spring? According to Tenden-san, surely there was some deep meaning, but I didn't quite get the situation in which I'd use a kunai in a hot spring, no matter how hard I tried. That's because, if you have this kunai, you can carry it even while you're taking a bath in a hot spring like this. Because it doesn't get rusty. Tenden-san replied, swelling her chest. But normally it's not like that you fight while you're taking a bath in a hot spring, right? I tried an extremely honest question that probably everyone would have thought immediately. Probably, from there on I'd be told the deep meaning of a hot spring-used kunai according to Tenden-san. However, yeah, come to think of it, you're right. Tenden-san made a dark face. Why did I create a thing like this? She said, and began staring dumbfounded at the white and muddy hot water. There was no deep reason. It was absolutely useless. Her shop would close, and she'd show her passion for investigating. People call that spacing out. But... However, Tenden-san's face cleared suddenly. If you carry a kunai like this in a hot spring, you'd look frighteningly sexy, right? Far from deep, she began talking about frighteningly superficial things. Wait a minute, I don't understand very well, but... If you look at this from a man's point of view, he'd surely think that you look sexy. I'm not a man, so I don't understand it well, but I was really sorry for Tenden-san, who was talking gleefully, but the image of someone carrying a kunai in a hot spring completely naked seemed nothing but funny to me. As I thought, it's useless. Probably because my reply had been doubtful, Tenden-san began feeling down again. Well, had the situation just turned upside down, like some time ago, I give up, as it was, Tenin-san's ninja tools shop, which was completely without customers even under normal circumstances, would go bankrupt. If I didn't do something, I was staring at Tenin-san's kunai while thinking frantically. Then, I had an idea. That's it. Tenin-san, it's not a hot spring use kunai. How about selling it as a kunai that never gets rusty, no matter how harsh the circumstances are? It looks rough, but usually there are kunai like this already. And this is meant to be used in a hot spring, no matter how much you struggle. Because it'll get rusty immediately in the harsh conditions outside the hot spring. Tenin-san sighed deeply and looked too much sad. What should I do? I couldn't think of any other way to use it normally. Why did she create something like that? I didn't know what should I tell her. If her ninja tool shop had gone bankrupt, Tenin-san would have lived while having a large inventory build up at her home. I had the feeling that it'd have been hardly different from now, but she'd have lived even more surrounded by ninja tools. Thereupon, Tenin-san muttered, still staring into space. As I thought, I should ask the sixth Gai-sensei, not you, Mirai-chan. I should ask them if a kunai in a hot spring is sexy. Please, don't. They'd be embarrassed. I said immediately, and Tenin-san burst into laughter. PFF, I was more embarrassed for Tenin-san, who had burst into laughter all of a sudden. What's the matter? Because your retort was so hasty. Besides, when I remember the sixth and Gai-sensei's embarrassed faces, when you said it with that serious look, it's too funny. Tenin-san made her joyful laughing voice resound around us, holding her sides. It seemed fake that just a moment ago she was feeling depressed, with a kunai she didn't know how to use in her hands. However, I'm glad. Tenin-san said after a short pause, taking a deep breath and whipping away a tear with her finger. Really, I was a little bit worried. Worried? Was it the hot spring use kunai? That's okay. I made a thing like that as a hobby from the start. Actually, I'm already fully satisfied with it because I was able to test it in practice like this. It's not that, Tenin-san continued. I'm glad to hear that you're getting along well with Gai-sensei, Mirai-chan. Listen, Gai-sensei is a little bit tiresome. I was wondering if you wouldn't get along, but you understood perfectly Gai-sensei's character, Mirai-chan, and you guessed perfectly his reaction, so I'm happy and that's funny. Saying this, Tenin-san began laughing again. Apparently, Tenin-san had always been worrying about what should she do if Gai-san and I weren't getting along all the way up to this end. Surely there were a lot of girls that didn't understand Gai-san's mood and character, and if not that, there was the age difference in addition. As his former student, it was natural that Tenin-san was worried. However, when she understood that I was getting along well with Gai-san, leaving the fact if I understood his mood or not aside, she had unintentionally burst into laughter because she felt relieved. Tenin-san crossed her arms and nodded frequently while saying things like, "No, I'm glad you don't dislike Gai-sensei." Even thought she said this and that. I understood how much Tenin-san loved Gai-san, and somehow I made a smiling face as well. Well, how's Gai-sensei? That man, he easily gets carried away while talking, so you have to be the straight man anyhow, and eventually you can't take it anymore, right? Tenin-san began talking about things like that with her eyes sparkling. They were sparkling like or even more than when she talks about her ninja tool shop. Apparently she couldn't help but talk about Gai-san. I could understand terribly well this feeling. I wasn't as familiar with him as Tenin-san, but only by traveling with him for a short while. There were a heap of things I wanted to say about Gai-san. I wanted to talk with somebody who could understand this. I wanted to share this. Gai-san had something that gave me this impression. All the more if it was Tenin-san, who had been training and going in mission together with him, and has been close to him as master and student since she was a child. How should I put it? I wasn't the only straight man anymore. I wanted somebody to rescue me, please. I couldn't fight against an opponent this strong alone. A straight man couldn't keep up with him. That kind of feeling. After that, Tenden-san and I got very excited while talking about Gai-san. Then, when I realized it, he had jumped all of a sudden. And then, with a feeling like you monster, he threw himself at my Jinjutsu. I talked on and on while agitating my bottled milk in the dressing room. The Gai-san discussion of the open bath had continued so much that I got all excited and had become as red as a lobster. Even when we came back to the dressing room, both of us dizzy, I kept talking like this. "Ah, I understand." Just as if the scene were vivid before my eyes, Tenden-san muttered earnestly while fanning her flushed face, flapping both her hands. By the way, Tenden-san had eagerly drunk up her bottled milk right after we bought it. That man, he's always like that, you know? Because he always jumps in like that without thinking. Even so, I panicked completely because of that unexpected development, too. When I yelled "stop!" Instinctively, the Jinjutsu dissolved, and it was a shock, honestly. I'd never have imagined that the Jinjutsu would be dissolved because of that. Really, it was the first time in my life. Then, even I drank up the rest of the milk in one gulp. The cold milk felt pleasant in my heated body. However, what was it? Bravery on the verge of strangeness. It was amazing. When I thought about Gai-san, who used to say there's one thing I learned in my life, there's no end to training, and kept training his body even now despite the fact that he wasn't a ninja in active duty, I already felt a feeling of respect towards him. Probably he is a person who acts rather than talk, a proud man that can't show himself ashamed in front of his former students as their role model. However, surprisingly, Tenden-san's point of view was a little different. Amazing bravery you say. Well, I agree, but... Tenden-san lowered her voice, as if she was telling me a secret. I wonder if Gai-sensei isn't a coward, really. Yeah. Impossible. Between you and me, staying with him for long years, I involuntarily came to think so, but he's not a coward through and through, of course, you know? As you see, I think he's a person who has a terrible courage. However, in some respects, he's also a scaredy cat. In the quiet dressing room without other people, Tenden-san continued. Gai-sensei is always cheerful to the point of being annoying and unnecessarily tiresome, and when something happens he jumps into it taking the initiative by himself, right? When I was a child I acknowledged him as a person like this, but becoming an adult I reached the same age of Gai-sensei in those days, so for some reason I came to think like that. That he's really a coward? At my question, Tenden-san nodded. By the way, by Gai-sensei in those days, Tenden-san was talking about when she was a child, when she had graduated from the academy and had been assigned to Gai-san's team, so Gai-san was probably still in his 20s. Gai-san in his 20s. I couldn't imagine him well. Did he look young, keep his hair long, and act all worked up? As if my power of imagination had reached its limit, Tenden-san began talking again. Every time something happened, Gai-sensei always showed us his nice guy pose with a smile and cheered on us, but surely even Gai-sensei was afraid. Well, he's a human, so of course he thought no, and he didn't want to do it, but even so it occurred to me that, being a sensei, he said it out loud on purpose, so that he wouldn't make us feel anxious, no matter if it was frightening and painful and difficult, and he went forward and forward without showing it even a little bit. Tenden-san said, and smiled gently. That story made me think that it was right. It was surely as she had said. It's not that a sensei is a sensei from the very beginning. That's a thing that can be said not only about Gai-san, but about everyone. Surely, nobody is a brave person from the beginning. People become brave for the first time when they show their bravery for their sake, or rather, for someone's sake. At least, Gai-san has always acted like this. However, if it's so, as I thought he's an amazing person, isn't he? At these few words I had unintentionally let out, Tenden-san smiled broadly. That's right. Gai-sensei is amazing. Impossibly amazing. Tenden-san smiled, looking pleased. I suddenly thought that I had seen that face even some time ago, at the open bath. When we were talking about Gai-san, Tenen-san was always doing it, smiling, looking pleased. However, when I reached the same age as Gai-sensei in those days, I wondered if I felt much more like a child compared with the old Gai-sensei. Maybe even now I feel like a child. Tenen-san said and smiled bitterly, but I didn't understand well her feelings yet. In the future, when I'll reach the age of the current Tenen-san, what will I ever think about myself? Will I think that the current Tenen-san felt more adult than me? Or, however, I wonder if Gai-sensei is afraid ghosts. Were we talking about the fact that he's a scaredy cat, really? Somehow, the pleasant story and the atmosphere were spoiled in a moment. No, really. That man had a big reaction, right? Even for a person like this, even in a scenario where other people were only a little afraid, doesn't it feel like he kicked up a fuss? Even if it's a characteristic story from the start, is he a scaredy cat or not? Well, surely I had that kind of impression, but then, taijutsu have no effect against ghosts, so it's useless. Seems like something he'd say, right? That looks like something he'd definitely say. There's no reason to fear something as long as you can hit it. But there's nothing you can do if you can't hit it. That's why he was afraid. For some reason, that was probably a way of thinking typical of Gai-san. Or rather, now I was aware of it, but even if I wasn't very familiar with him as we traveled together, a thinking similar to Gai-san's was taking form inside of me. This was much scarier than ghosts. If this situation keeps going on, I'll surely become like Lee-san. I was seriously thinking things like that. Such a pointlessly strong power of influence. As I thought, Gai-san was an amazing person. When I went out of the dressing room with Tenen-san, wearing a cute yukata with a shuriken pattern, I caught sight of the sixth back, who was wearing a similar shuriken pattern yukata. For some reason, he was making a phone call. What? Tenen-san tilted her head a little, but she didn't manage to catch his words because he was chattering in a low voice. Gai-sensei is over there. Tenen-san spotted Gai-san. I thought he was in his room, but he was wandering aimlessly with an idle appearance. Since it seemed that the sixth phone call wasn't over, I followed after Tenen-san for the time being. Gai-sensei, what are you doing? Ten-ten? Gai-san was going back and forth in front of the souvenir store without doing anything, but as soon as he raised his voice, his face brightened suddenly. Since you came all the way to this inn, please relax in your room. However, when Tenen-san told him this, for some reason Gai-san became nervous. No, well, I was thinking about going in a place to drink hot spring water, Gai-san said while smiling heartily. However, for some reason, he looked strange. He felt different from usual. However, apart from that, we already went to a place to drink hot spring water not long ago, didn't we? We can't do it again. 1 cup a day is enough. I warned to Gai-san, who had started talking about going to a place to drink hot spring water all of a sudden. Before we came to the inn, we had already drunk hot spring water in a place to drink hot spring water. If you drink too much spring water at once, it could give the opposite effects. You must drink only 1 cup a day, written warning said clearly. That's right. No, I was kind of free. Please don't disregard the rules of use and doses just because you have spare time. I was utterly amazed, but it looked like Tenen-san was thinking. She smiled complacently like a mischievous child, and began talking. Hey, Gai-sensei. Isn't it that you're afraid of being in your room alone? This inn has quite a history. You're afraid that something may happen. Her way of speaking was just as if she was looking at a little child with a pleased look. Don't be ridiculous. What do you mean with something? It's not as if I were a child. Gai-san made an indignant expression. It was a natural reaction. However, this inn had quite a history, as expected from something called Old Shop, and the building was old. There were places, like the reception desk and the public bath, that had been renewed here and there, but the sixth and Gai-san's room was a separated guest room with an old structure, deep and deep down the hallway. If I had been alone in a quiet place, without the other guests around, in which the employees rarely came, leaving ghosts and similar aside, maybe I'd felt helpless. Actually, the sixth had left to make a phone call, and Gai-san had been left alone for a short while. Probably he had rushed out of the room because there was too much silence. Maybe his room was surprisingly lonely. I stared at Gai-san, thinking about what to say. At the same time, I thought that also the fact of not being able to stay still all alone was typical of Gai-san. By the way, the guest room was far away, but I had ventured to choose a room like that. They had relied on me for the part of the inn, and I had assigned them a room far away with no people around. Naturally, as their attendant, I made arrangements for an inn, and as their guard, I booked a room. It didn't mean that I had soaked into the hot spring with Tenen-san absolutely carefreely. A room where to stay is an easy thing for a guard. It was the most basic thing of all the basics. A room in which a party of tourists were staying around was unreasonable, and we'd have been troubled if an unspecified number of people would have loitered around the hallway in front of the room. And of course, I had checked inside the room previously. What was going on outside the window? Wasn't it something out of place in the furniture or the equipment of the provisions? Were there monsters hiding above the ceiling? Were there yukata with cute patterns or not? I had checked every possible thing like that. I needed to check indirectly and learn by heart also the faces and the number of the employees and the guests that were staying at the inn. If the faces I didn't recognize increased, I'd have to be cautious. Moreover, I had to postpone the time of my bath. While bathing and going to bed, it's easy to be taken by surprise. It's the time when you have to be especially vigilant. For this reason, it didn't mean that I'd carelessly take a bath at the same time with the targets I was guarding. Of course, moreover, if something accidentally happened to the targets of my guard while I was taking a bath, I'd end up running stark naked without even having any equipment. Then for sure I'd need the hot spring use kunai Tenen-san invented. It was basically an unlikely situation. That day, the sixth had charmed me with the words, "I'll keep an eye on Guy, so you can go ahead," and I went bathing before, but I could call it a special treatment. In a normal mission, far from postponing the time of bathing, I wouldn't have been able to take a bath in the first place. I'd have ended the mission covered in sweat and mud, and I'd have taken a bath only after going back to the village. If compared with that, the fact that there were hot springs in the land of the mission and that I could even take a bath was like a dream. On the contrary, if I had been told this condition before my departure, I'd probably have hesitated in accepting it, being afraid that there was something behind it, or rather that the pattern had turned into a nightmare. The marvelous combination of the loose content of the mission that was almost a holiday, and the fact that the one giving directions was the even more loose sixth, brought me the good treatment that I could hardly have thought of normally, that is that I could rest in a hot spring carefreely like this. I expressed my thanks towards the sixth's back, who was at the phone. Thanks to the sixth, I could enter in a hot spring even that day. I could sleep on a warm mattress. There was no way that I'd sleep outdoor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What? While I was joining my hands with my eyes closed, the sixth, who had finished his phone call, had come near me unnoticed. I deeply thanked again the sixth, who was bewildered by the fact that I was praying in front of him. Thank you very much. Mage, What do you mean? I was able to go to a hot spring. Yeah. I tried to ask the sixth, who had tilted his head in contemplation, what was worrying him. Here, the phone call, who was it? If it was a scheduled message, later I'll... Oh, it was from Naruto. From the seventh. Maybe it's some state of emergency. Since I never had imagined that he was talking at the phone with the seventh, I raised my voice in surprise. I shut my mouth, panicking, and checked my surroundings. It seemed that nobody had noticed it in particular. Lowering my tone of voice, I continued. Do we have to come back? The fact that he was talking at the phone with the seventh meant that something important had happened. Depending on the situation, we might have gone back to the village immediately. However, the sixth's expression wasn't different from usual. No, it's nothing special. It was a phone call just to check a little on us. Besides, even if something had happened, you don't need to worry more than necessary. In the end, all my students are reliable, the sixth answered, still smiling. Just to check a little, just by looking at this situation, it didn't look like a situation in which the previous Hokage had to come back. I relaxed. Then, while I was relaxing, I was a little embarrassed, but there was another thing I wanted to ask. My eyes instinctively wandered around. I couldn't look straight to the sixth's face. Here, by the way, did the seventh say, well, some words of encouragement about me? The mage? We didn't talk about us here in particular. Well, I guess he trusts us that much. The sixth laughed. Looking at the sixth's appearance, Tenden-san sighed. Is that so? Although I had expected it a little, the conversation ended drastically. Well, if you two came back, we can go to the bath, too, the sixth said, and started pushing Gai-san's wheelchair. Kakashi, can we play ping pong before the bath? I came here just for this. Gai-san started talking while mimicking a practice swing. What about the conversation about going to a place to drink hot spring water? I stared at the two, who were going towards the game center. Thereupon, suddenly, hey, something amusing came into my mind, but Tenden-san whispered into my ear. Whispering, my ear tickled. After this, when they come back, how about it? It sounds amusing, doesn't it? Tenden-san made me some proposal, and smiled innocently. But, such an obvious ghost. SSSH Tenden-san put her forefinger in front of her lips. Of course, so that the sixth and Gai-san didn't hear us. Tenden-san wanted to play a trick on Gai-san when he'd come back from the hot spring later. Well then, I'll make the arrangements, so please buy me some time with the ping pong or whatever. Wait a second. Mirai, I'm sorry, but can't you do the referee? Yes. In the span of time my attention was caught by Gai-san's call. Tenden-san quickly disappeared. She had gone fetching clothes to use for her trick. Without even disguising herself, she's already like a ghost in terms of disappearing. I thought about Tenden-san when I noticed she had disappeared. So, it looked like Tenden-san wanted to scare Gai-san by disguising herself as a ghost. I thought that it was not as if he were a kid, but since she had disappeared the moment I was about to say what I wanted to say, it couldn't be helped. On top of that, she looked happy with such an innocent face. Why do Gai-san's students have such a feeling? Also Lee-san looked like this, but why do they have this somewhat strange enthusiasm, or, I don't know how to put it, but in any case, why do they act like this? They're strong. Team Guy, I was thinking about these things absent-mindedly. Then, I tried to imagine again Gai-san when he was in his 20s. Without the long hair, perhaps, no, surely he wouldn't be different from now, wearing the same hairstyle. Gai-san was that kind of person. Kakashi, don't hold back. Gai-san's voice echoed in the game center. There weren't other people besides us, and in the deserted-looking game center there was only a billiard table besides the ping-pong table. The sixth and Gai-san were facing each other, the ping-pong table between them, a ping-pong paddle in one hand. I was sitting nearby on a chair with torn fabric. As those two's referee, since they had decided to have a ping-pong showdown, sweating out before going to the hot spring. Gai-san made a practice swing as if he was slashing the air. Humph, humph, good rhythm. Start whenever you like. Today for sure I'll, thereupon, dong. The ping-pong ball bounced in Gai-san's court, making a satisfying sound. Without stopping, the ping-pong ball fell onto the floor. Of course, the sixth was the one who had scored. That's another point. When I said it while chasing the rolling ping-pong ball, Gai-san yelled, "You, aiming in the midst of a practice swing is unfair." "No, you said whenever you like." The match starts now. Gai-san was as boisterous as usual. Would this Gai-san really be surprised by a Puro Ghost prank? Rather than being surprised, wouldn't he normally get angry? If he gets angry also with the accomplice, I'll be in trouble. While I thought about these things, the match proceeded. Gai-san's cries of "no" or "come on" blended with the satisfying sound of the ping-pong ball bouncing. Finally, the rally began for real. The ping-pong ball flew fast before my eyes. Neither of them made a step back, and the violent exchange of blows continued. Neither of them scored a point. I had been asked by Tenin-san to buy her time until she could prepare the ghost prank, but there was no need to buy time that much. A ghost. As I stared absent-mindedly at the struggling match, I suddenly remembered a thing. Do you think that ghosts exist? When I passed the Chunin exams, I asked this question. We talked about it when I had joined my hands in front of my father's grave and told him about my success. It's not that I was thinking about it deeply, but the words had escaped from my mouth almost instinctively. How should I put it? At my question, the answer came back from behind me. Well, actually I did almost die myself, but still I didn't go as far as becoming a ghost. They may exist, and they may not. Substantially, when people talk about ghosts, it's always been like that, right? Usually, the story that he had almost died came out mixed with a bitter smile. With a light way of speaking, as if it was nothing. In my epic, which didn't know war, that was a nearly impossible feeling. Those were words of an echo that you could hear only in a distant epic, just like in a tale. However, I think that they don't exist. I turned around, smiling. If ghosts existed, Dad could come and meet me at least once, couldn't he? That was a thing that I had thought when I became old enough. If ghosts existed, where was my father now, and what was he doing? Why didn't he came and meet me and Mom? Was there a reason he couldn't come and meet us? No, it wasn't like that. Things like ghosts don't exist from the start. It's simple. If a person dies, it's the end. That's why my father doesn't come back. No matter how much I wait, no matter how much I want it, he'll never come back. There's no coming back. As I stared with cold eyes at my classmates that got excited for ghost stories, I was always thinking these things. It seemed stupid to say what eek for something that couldn't exist. You can't see him with your eyes, but, surprisingly enough, he came back to meet you. Even I understood that those were words of mere consolation. However, if I can't see him, there's no point. At least a glimpse, I thought. Especially in a day like that day, in which I had accomplished something. You were able to become a Chunin, so you wanted to tell him personally. Then, I wanted him to give me some words of well done. I was in front of his tomb, which I had visited many times since I was a child, but I had never become sentimental until that day. I'm sorry, today I'm feeling a little bit off. I smiled awkwardly, and he suddenly gave me a certain thing. That was a chakra blade combined with a brass knuckle that you use wearing it on your fist. It was a custom-made article made with a rare metal that acted according to the user's chakra. Sensei, you're... That's right. And it was also your father's, my sensei said, and nodded silently. As to say, take it. I don't know if ghosts exist or not, but I think that souls are immortal. I put the chakra blade I had taken in my fist, and tried to grasp it tightly. It was an unrefined ninja tool that sparkled dimly. Probably it was just another weapon from the point of view of a person that didn't know it, but for me it was different. It was my father's memento, a thing that my sensei had inherited. It was a meaningful thing. My sensei had said that souls are immortal. As a young boy he had been my father's student, and when became an adult in the end, he became my sensei. My sensei had been trained by my father, and now he trained me. And then, my father's form of existence, which my sensei had inherited, was now clutched in my hands. Now that I thought about it, my sensei had always been protecting me in my father's stead. When I thought about this, the fact that ghosts didn't exist seemed nothing special to me. Because, rather than that, I could feel my father's breathing, my father's soul, much closer to me. I've always been dreaming about this day. At last, I've been able to hand it over to you. My sensei smiled gently. You gave it all, Mirai. Congratulations on passing the exam. If my father had been in his place, I'm sure he'd have told me the same things. I firmly clutched the chakra blades, which were my congratulation gift for passing the exam. Yes. My voice was hoarse. I had my back still turned towards my sensei. Please, look at me from behind. Even if they were tears of joy, I didn't want my teacher to see me crying. I couldn't make him worry for me forever and protect me anymore. From now on, I'll become a fine ninja, so you can relax and watch me, sensei. Somehow, with the inherited will in my hand, I wanted him to watch my back as I proceeded forward. I believe that it's the least thing I can do in exchange of it, for my sensei, snap, the ping pong ball hit the net. At that sound, I came back to my senses, taken aback. And the moment I came back to my senses, my cheeks blushed red. Somehow, I feel like I said something quite embarrassing. It was a rather creepy feeling. Just now, I have remembered about the day I became a chunin. Alright, for today. Let's stop here. Dai-san said, staggering and dripping with sweat, as if the words had been squeezed out of his throat. Mirai, which one of us won? Even if I was staring at Dai-san, who was panting out of breath, my eyes wandered about into space. Sorry. I was lost in thought. What? Dai-san yelled, his shoulders still dropped, crestfallen. Since I was remembering my past absent-mindedly, I hadn't paid much attention, but probably it had been a worthy Mortal Kombat. Apparently, when I told him that I didn't know the score, he lost all his energies in one go. Which one on earth won? Dai-san had no longer his usual vitality in his voice. I did an inexcusable thing. However, the sixth was calm, as expected from him. At any rate, for 1 point difference the victory is mine, I think, he said, and grinned. He had been counting the points by himself. Whatever. Let's call it a draw for today. Dai-san muttered with a disappointed look. No, for 1 point difference, Kakashi, let's go to the bath. Dai-san said, and went towards the large public bath, dejected. Dai, at any rate, it's a draw. Too bad. Isn't it that you're doing it on purpose, maybe? It's a draw. Following after Dai-san, who was stressing the word draw excessively, also the sixth went to the large public bath. Well then, see you later. I was told by the sixth, who had looked over his shoulder, and I nodded silently. I intended on waiting for them still sitting on the chair in front of the large public bath until they came back. The moment I was about to escort those two and leave the game center as well, bam, a slap on my shoulders. Now that the sixth and Dai-san were gone, there shouldn't have been anyone else in the game center. I calmly turned around, and a blood-stained woman was standing in front of my eyes, wearing white clothes. You made the arrangements. I sighed relieved, looking at her figure. I'm glad you made it in time. Just now, they've gone to the hot spring. Unlike me, who was smiling relieved, the face of the woman in front of me became stern. Wait, what's this? Why are you scared? No, but you had told me that you disguise yourself as a ghost, right? That's why, if a person stands behind you without warning, normally you should be frightened, right? The blood-stained woman, Tenin-san, who wore makeup with sticks of blood, shouted, more frightened than me. Even if you tell me that it doesn't seem normal. It was as unthinkable as one would expect. Even though, for my part, I was more scared by the scared Tenin-san rather than the fact that she had disguised herself as a ghost. Since I don't like being misunderstood, I told her in advance that it wasn't that my reaction was weak. But I wasn't frightened because it was you, Tenin-san, you know? Because you had informed me about the ghost prank and I knew. That's right. Oh well, it's surely like that. But still, if a person that wasn't me had been standing bloodstained in front of you, you'd surely be frightened, right? Of course, I'd have reacted properly. I'd have asked, "Are you okay? Let's go to the hospital." Of course I wouldn't have left her alone. What's with this mentality? These young guards are terrific nowadays. For some reason, Tenen-san began feeling the gap between our generations. It's not that, shouldn't you say a ghost? No, because ghosts don't exist. I declared flatly, and Tenen-san made a rather sad face. Kids are amazing nowadays. I'd never have imagined that I'd come to think things like young people these days. Is that so? Did I think that? I'm thinking again that I've grown old. Tenen-san sighed deeply. For some reason, the atmosphere in the room became heavy. I felt like the current situation was really more ghost-like than some time ago. However, even if I thought so, I couldn't tell her. By the way, what will you do when those two come back? Tenen-san was feeling down, so I brought up the topic of the prank. Although I had thought that it was a childish trick the first time I heard about the ghost prank, now I had become the instigator, and it was me the one who looked forward to it. I give up. Well then, as I thought, I'm an accomplice. Even though I was thinking so, I couldn't hold back my excitement. My heart was throbbing violently. Surely, now my eyes were sparkling fierily. Naturally, it was the same also for Tenen-san. An evil smile was floating on her face, full of blood, dry blood, to be accurate. Wait and see. I'll make Gai-sensei's shrieks echo through the whole inn. Tenen-san clutched her fist firmly. Her face was full of dry blood and determination. Probably, she intended on scare Gai-san as much as she couldn't scare me. Tenen-san told me the plan of the prank, and finally the moment approached. The prank that Tenen-san had devised was extraordinarily simple. The simpler, the better. Tenen-san told me. First of all, since we acted quickly, we didn't even have the fear that Gai-san would notice us. Furthermore, the more we had tried to make an elaborate thing, the more inevitably contrived it would have become, and I had the fear that Gai-san, who's unexpectedly a person of quick perception, would easily see through it. Even if he's got old, he's still Gai-sensei's star-dog. Tenen-san said. Of course, I understood what that expression meant, but I wondered if also that prank would make her former teacher grow old. For this reason, we had no choice but play with a simple, explosive prank. Anyway, there was also the sixth near him. Taking too long wasn't a good plan. Our strategy was like this. I would join the two of them after they returned from the public bath, and suggest that they would go back to their room. When they would reach a detached hallway with no one else around, Tenen-san would appear and frighten him. That was it. Truly simple. By the way, while we go from the public bath to the hallway, I'd add that Tenen-san had gone back to her own room beforehand to rest. That was my duty. Then, finally the two of them came back from the public bath. No, but the match of some time ago was disappointing. A draw. Technically, for one point I suggested that the two of them that were still arguing back and forth went back to their room. Conversationally, I also told them that Tenen-san had already gone back to her room to rest. None of them showed any sign of suspicion. There was no reason to be suspicious from the start. Success. I followed after the sixth, who was pushing Gai-san's wheelchair. The detached room was getting near. The hallway that led to the detached room was gloomy and deserted. Quiet. The only thing that could be heard was the faint sound of our footsteps and the sound of the wheels of Gai-san's wheelchair. Well, where will she come from? The right time would probably come soon. While trying not to smile, I kept wearing an expression of feigned ignorance. Gai-san, please forgive your guard that can appreciate pranks. I apologized in advance inside my head. However, I really love the fact that I'll watch the person who will fall for the trick. For this reason, for this prank only, I won't protect you. But Gai-san, I want you to fall short of my expectations. I want you, Gai-san, to show Tenin-san that you're a man who's not afraid of ghosts. On the contrary, I want you to surprise Tenin-san without raising even a scream. Nuaya. Gai-san shrieked. Ah, it's useless. Even I, who don't believe in ghosts, would have shrieked if I had been deceived without knowing it. All of a sudden, a bloody Tenin-san was hanging upside down in front of Gai-san's eyes, who was pushed in his wheelchair by the sixth and was going towards his room. Even though she said it was simple, hanging upside down was a way of frightening characteristic of Gai-san's students who are famous for taijutsu. Gai-san, who was face to face with an upside-down Tenin-san with a ghost makeup at a super point-blank range, threw his head back, still shrieking, and couldn't step behind since there was the sixth pushing his wheelchair. For this reason he ended up twisting his body unnaturally and knocked the back of his head with all his might against a pillar nearby. As a result, he fainted, with foam coming out of his mouth. Hey, see? The prank was a huge success. At Gai-san's figure, Tenin-san landed, cutting the ropes that kept her upside down while rejoicing. What? It was a nice reaction, right? Tenin-san smiled proudly, turning towards me. Ah, she had revealed the fact that I was her accomplice. Hold on, you too. The sixth was stunned. By the way, the sixth hadn't moved at all for Tenin-san's surprise attack. Although he was standing behind Gai-san, that was a perfect surprise attack. Tenin-san had said that the more unnecessarily boisterous the type, like Gai-san, was, the bigger the reaction would be, and it was surely like that. Anyhow, I couldn't imagine the figure of the sixth shrieking and panicking. You shouldn't teach mean mischief to your juniors. You should try to become a much better example. Yes, I'll pay attention from now on. At Tenin-san's light response, the sixth let out a sigh. Good grief. Even under normal circumstances Guy is so sensitive. While he muttered these things, he carried Gai-san, who had fainted, pushing his wheelchair. Well, in this case, if we have done a little more elaborate prank, it might have ended up badly. Tenin-san muttered while seeing the sixth and Gai-san off. She's a wicked woman. Tenin-san began smiling again like a mischievous child. For example, wouldn't it be fun if a lot of tags were affixed for no particular reason, like, on the other side of their sliding door, which the two of them will see after they return to their room? It's an inviolable rule of pranks. It says that in the moment you lose focus, pretending that it's all over, it's very easy to get caught. However, in this case, I did a bad thing to Tenin-san. I apologized nervously. I'm sorry, I accidentally tore them off. Tenin-san, who was grinning, made a straight face all of a sudden. I fetched a bundle of tags from my breast pocket and handed them to Tenin-san. They looked an old type I'd never seen. Since they were affixed somehow at random, I removed them for the time being. Wait, what? You took them. Why? Tenin-san's face, who had taken the tags, grew gradually pale. For some reason, she was more ghost-like now than before. By the way, tearing off the tags was the first thing I had done as soon as I had arrived to this inn. It was why I had checked if there wasn't something strange in the room. It was the room where the sixth would stay. There shouldn't have been anything at all. They didn't look like exploding tags, but there were odd tags affixed in the room. I didn't understand well what were they used for, but probably, as a guard, I had to tear them off, of course. But if they scared those two, it should have been better not to tear them off, right? No, those were things that you mustn't tear off. Tenin-san yelled with a terrified expression, in contrast with me, who was laughing with ah. What do I do? I'm afraid, but... Looking at Tenin-san, who was trembling, I gradually realized it, too. Ah, is that so? Tags for ghosts? So why did you tear the off? Geez. Tenin-san, despite she was wearing a ghost makeup using even clots of blood, was afraid of ghost curses. She was a different person. Here, Tenden-san, ghosts don't exist. As for the tags I accidentally tore off, it's okay because I'll apologize afterwards with the people of the inn. I told the frightened Tenden-san, and we went back to our room. The next day, although I had a somehow washed out feeling, maybe because the tiredness of the journey until now had appeared suddenly, or because I had bathed for too long yesterday, I welcomed the morning as usual, as if nothing had changed. Of course, it's not that during the night ghosts had appeared or something, and I fell asleep immediately. Apparently Tenden-san, who was frightened for a little while, fell asleep immediately, maybe because she was tired as well. So, I told you that ghosts and things like that don't exist, haven't I? I easily made some flexing exercises while breathing the refreshing morning air and the odor of the hot springs with my whole chest. I stretched my arms, and my neck and shoulders creaked. As I thought, it seemed that the weariness of the hot spring had appeared. However, if I had been told to sleep in the room where the tags were affixed, it'd be impossible for me, you know? Tenden-san told me in a small voice. Of course, since the room with the tags affixed was the detached one where the sixth and Gai-san were staying, it wasn't our room. However, even if I asked the sixth indirectly, apparently he had slept soundly, and he had made a nonchalant face. As I thought, ghosts don't exist. However, only Gai-san had a face as if he were about to die, with dark shadows below his eyes. It seemed that Tenden-san's prank had been super effective, even if for one night. I saw it, he muttered, whispering. Apparently, it was true what Tenden-san had said, that Gai-san might really be a coward. I couldn't help but think that the manly Gai-san had such a side. Probably, everyone has a thing in which they're weak, but even so, to end up like this for a mere prank. Isn't this a true scaredy cat? Well, well then, I'm off to my holiday hot spring tour. We decided to part from Tenden-san in front of the inn. Our inspection mission was still continuing. I'll try to explore the possibilities of my hot spring use kanai in this country for a little while more, Tenden-san said, and gave me a thumbs up. She hadn't given up yet. As expected from a student of Gai-san's, she already resembled him even in the pose. I hope it'll sell well. While I said these sugarcoat words and so forth, we parted from Tenden-san. By the way, after that, Tenden-san worked on the hot spring use kanai, but in the end it turned out to be a great success among the evil people and the celebrities of every country as a stylish self-protection tool to use while you take a bath. Apparently, the fact that it was easy to understand defeated its rough appearance, which wasn't different from ordinary kanai, the fact that it was easy to handle, and the fact that it had normally become rusty under the harsh circumstances outside the hot springs. The request came from the people that were protected, who wanted to have a weapon just in case something happened. Despite the ones who protected them, no, exactly because of the ones who protected them, they hadn't thought that far. The fact is that you never know what could happen in the world. Well then, we had parted from Tenden-san and went back to our observation journey. Guy has been worried like this since yesterday. I was given this piece of advice by the sixth. His tone included just a little bit of biting remark, as if he was implying it was because we had done that stupid ghost prank. Gai-san was trembling all over with a pale face. And he kept saying I saw it, as usual. To Gai-san's eyes, Tenden-san probably had looked like a true ghost. Gai-san with a dark expression for the whole morning. The sixth speechless. Since Tenden-san, who was the moodmaker for better or for worse, wasn't there, the atmosphere became quite awkward. I had to do something. It was my duty as their attendant. Here, Gai-san. I timidly tried to start a conversation. I'm sorry about yesterday. That was Tenden-san's prank. Since Gai-san was too much scared, I reluctantly revealed the trick. The only one who'd reveal the trick and get scolded after this was me. In the end, all my efforts would come into nothing. However, unexpected words came out of Gai-san's mouth. Mirai, "What the heck are you talking about?" he asked me with a straight face. "No, yesterday, it was only a prank. I'm saying that the one dropping from the ceiling was really Tenen-san disguised as a ghost. The one I saw was an armored warrior ghost, you know? Besides, that was a man, no matter how you look at it." Eh? In a moment my head became completely blank. I hadn't understood well what Gai-san was saying. It was a frightening figure, a blood-stained armored warrior. Gai-san began narrating last night's events while trembling. In front of me, who couldn't fall asleep, a guy appeared. It was slightly transparent, and the moment I took a look at it, I understood that it didn't belong to this world. The next moment, my body froze, and I couldn't move. Also, my voice couldn't come out. I could only hear Kakashi's regular breathing, who was sleeping next to me. It loitered in our room for a while, and it slipped through the window and got out. I frantically followed it, moving only my eyes. It slipped through the wall of the main building, and Mirai, it disappeared into the room where you and Tenten were sleeping. While I listened to Gai-san's tale, for some reason my physical condition worsened. Come to think of it, my body had been oddly languid since morning. It probably had been my imagination, but I had felt my shoulders particularly heavy. Surely I had been frightened by Tenen's prank, but it was cute compared with last night's armored warrior. Also, playing pranks together with your juniors is fine, it's part of youth, isn't it? That's probably why he couldn't sleep. Gai-san smiled with a disheartened face. Or rather, Gai-san was saying that he had understood Tenen-san's prank, and he had seen an armored warrior, something else besides Tenen-san, and in addition he had seen that guy, which seemed half-transparent, slipping through a wall and entering into the place where I was sleeping. This morning, when I apologized for having torn off the tags when we left the inn, all the employees of the inn became pale at once. They asked me things like, "Were you alright?" and "Did something happen?" while being frightened. I don't believe in ghosts, so I replied nothing happened in particular, in a light mood, and smiled. But my whole body grew pale at once. That was the reason why Gai-san was reluctant to stay in his room alone. When he had purposely left the room to the point of following the sixth, who was making a phone call, at that point of time, there was already a somehow evil presence in the room. Because I, who had checked their rooms just before, had torn off the tags thoroughly, driven by my sense of duty as their guard, as I thought, that was because I shouldn't have torn them off. Then, I began trembling together with Gai-san. Somehow, my shoulders felt heavier than before. What could I do? I couldn't go back anymore, and then, what's up with you two? You have dark faces, you know? Ah, the sixth laughed. He had said those words in a mood different from usual. To me and Gai-san, who were wrapped in terror, his voice was so calm that it seemed out of place, scary. I wasn't talking about ghosts. The sixth, who wasn't perturbed no matter what happened, was scary. Unbelievable. When I saw the sixth laughing even more carefreely, with Gai-san and me pale in front of his eyes, the fact that I didn't understand well that thing of the armored warrior was not important anymore. Instead, it was the sixth that had been sleeping soundly till morning in a room in which an armored warrior was littering. And why was he reacting so calmly about it? How could he smile so gently? The sixth's extremely relaxed atmosphere was gradually painting out the horror of the place. And apparently, even the most relaxed people feel panic at some point. Looking at the sixth, who was smiling carefreely, I didn't think that he'd get the goosebumps for the above-mentioned story of the armored warrior. This is the sixth Hokage. I gulped, covered in a cold sweat. While being afraid of the monster-like mental strength of the previous Hokage, our journey continued. End of Chapter 3. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.